residents to bring family members into the country. The plan would enact the most far-reaching changes to the system of legal immigration in decades and represents the president's latest effort to stem the flow of newcomers to the United States. Since taking office, he has barred many visitors from select Muslim-majority countries, limited the influx of refugees, increased immigration arrests and pressed to build a wall along the southern border. In asking Congress to curb legal immigration, Mr. Trump intensified a debate about national identity, economic growth, worker fairness and American values that animated his campaign last year. Critics said the proposal would undercut the fundamental vision of the United States as a haven for the poor and huddled masses, while the president and his allies said the country had taken in too many low-skilled immigrants for too long to the detriment of American workers. This legislation will not only restore our competitive edge in the 21st century, but it will restore the sacred bonds of trust between America and its citizens, Mr. Trump said at a White House event alongside 2 Republican senators sponsoring the bill. This legislation demonstrates our compassion for struggling American families who deserve an immigration system that puts their needs first and that puts America first. In throwing his weight behind a bill, Mr. Trump added one more long-odds priority to a legislative agenda already packed with them in the wake of the defeat of legislation to repeal and replace President Barack Obama's health care program. The president has already vowed to overhaul the tax code and rebuild the nation's roads, airports and other infrastructure. Continue reading the main story. Recent comments. Expat 1 hour ago. Like the Polish construction workers who built Trump Tower, or the Dominicans and Haitians tending the lawn and cleaning rooms at Mar-a-Lago? Christine 1 hour ago. The religious right must be very upset with this new policy as it contradicts Jesus in every way. Perhaps they will change the golden rule. RB 1 hour ago. Trump of course backs a bill that will keep out non-English speaking immigrants. They forgot to mention those of non-European ancestry. See all comments, write a comment. But by endorsing legal immigration cuts, a move he has long supported, Mr. Trump returned to a theme that has defined his short political career and excites his conservative base at a time when his poll numbers continue to sink. Just 33% of Americans approved of his performance in the latest Quinnipiac University survey, the lowest rating of his presidency, and down from 40% a month ago. Democrats and some Republicans quickly criticized the move. Instead of catching criminals, Trump wants to tear apart communities and punish immigrant families that are making valuable contributions to our economy, said Tom Perez, the chairman of the Democratic National Committee. That's not what America stands for. The bill, sponsored by Senators Tom Cotton of Arkansas and David Perdue of Georgia, would institute a merit-based system to determine who is admitted to the country and granted legal residency green cards, favoring applicants based on skills, education and language ability rather than relations with people already here. The proposal revives an idea included in broader immigration legislation supported by President George W. Bush that died in 2007. More than 1 million people are granted legal residency each year, and the proposal would reduce that by 41% in its first year and 50% by its 10th year, according to projections cited by its sponsors. The reductions would come largely from those brought in through family connections. The number of immigrants granted legal residency on the basis of job skills, about 140,000, would remain roughly the same. Under the current system, most legal immigrants are admitted to the United States based on family ties. American citizens can sponsor spouses, parents and minor children for an unrestricted number of visas, while siblings and adult children are given preferences for a limited number of visas available to them. Legal permanent residents holding green cards can also sponsor spouses and children. In 2014, 64% of immigrants admitted with legal residency were immediate relatives of American citizens or sponsored by family members. Just 15% entered through employment-based preferences, according to the Migration Policy Institute, an independent research organization. But that does not mean that those who came in on family ties were necessarily low-skilled or uneducated. The legislation would award points based on education, ability to speak English, high-paying job offers, age, record of achievement and entrepreneurial initiative. But while it would still allow spouses and minor children of Americans and legal residents to come in, it would eliminate preferences for other relatives, like siblings and adult children. The bill would create a renewable temporary visa for older adult parents who come for caretaking purposes. The legislation would limit refugees offered permanent residency to $50,000 a year and eliminate a diversity visa lottery that the sponsors said does not promote diversity. The senators said their bill was meant to emulate systems in Canada and Australia. The projections cited by the sponsors said legal immigration would decrease to 637,960 after a year and to 539,958 after a decade. "Our current system does not work," Mr. Perdue said. "It keeps America from being competitive and it does not meet the needs of our economy today." Mr. Cotton said low-skilled immigrants push down wages for those who worked with their hands. "For some people, they may think that that's a symbol of America's virtue and generosity," he said. "I think it's a symbol that we're not committed to working-class Americans, and we need to change that." But Senator Lindsey Graham, Republican of South Carolina, noted that agriculture and tourism were his state's top two industries. "If this proposal were to become law, it would be devastating to our state's economy, which relies on this immigrant workforce," he said. "Hotels, restaurants, golf courses and farmers," he added, "will tell you this proposal to cut legal immigration in half would put their business in peril." Cutting legal immigration would make it harder for Mr. Trump to reach the stronger economic growth that he has promised. Bringing in more workers, especially during a time of low unemployment, increases the size of an economy. Critics said the plan would result in labor shortages, especially in lower-wage jobs that many Americans do not want. The National Immigration Forum, an advocacy group, said the country was already facing a workforce gap of 7.5 million jobs by 2020. Cutting legal immigration for the sake of cutting immigration would cause irreparable harm to the American worker and their family, said Ali Noorani, the group's executive director. Surveys show most Americans believe legal immigration benefits the country. In a Gallup poll in January, 41% of Americans were satisfied with the overall level of immigration, 11 percentage points higher than the year before and the highest since the question was first asked in 2001. Still, 53% of Americans remain dissatisfied. The plan endorsed by Mr. Trump generated a fiery exchange at the White House briefing when Stephen Miller, the president's policy advisor and a longtime advocate of immigration limits, defended the proposal. Pressed for statistics to back up claims that immigration was costing Americans jobs, he cited several studies that have been debated by experts. "But let's also use common sense here, folks," Mr. Miller said. "At the end of the day, why do special interests want to bring in more low-skill workers?" He rejected the argument that immigration policy should also be based on compassion. "Maybe it's time we had compassion for American workers," he said. When a reporter read him some of the words from the Statue of Liberty, "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free," Mr. Miller dismissed them. "The poem that you're referring to was added later," he said. "It's not actually part of the original Statue of Liberty." He noted that in 1970, the United States allowed in only a third as many legal immigrants as it now does. Was that violating or not violating the Statue of Liberty law of the land?